Hi, I want to tell you a short story out of Judges 6. And the background to this story is the Israelites had turned their backs on God. They were worshipping other idols, and God had got so fed up with them, he'd allowed the Midianites to come and to raid their land, to pinch their crops. And the Israelites were starving, and they were crying out to God to rescue them. And so God, in his mercy, put together a plan to rescue the Israelites. And we're reading a part of what that plan was, and how God chose to use an individual, just a normal everyday individual, just like you, just like me, to save a nation. Reading from Joshua chapter 6, and I'm reading from verse 11. Then the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak that was Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, as his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress in order to save it from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O valiant warrior." This is the man that's hiding in the press. God says, "I am with you, valiant warrior." Gideon said to him, "O Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles which our families told us about, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us in the hands of the Midian." The Lord looked at him and said, "Go in this your strength and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you?" He said to him, "O Lord, how should I deliver Israel? Behold, my family is the least in Manasseh, and I am the youngest in my father's house." But the Lord said to him, "Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat Midian as one man." So let's just clarify this picture. Here's a man where life is really tough. He's hiding from his enemies. He's probably very, very afraid, and he's desperately trying to gather food for his family. And he's probably looking out for his enemies as he's doing it, and he's worried about the future. And God comes along, and the angel says to him, "Gideon, you mighty warrior." And that speaks to me really strongly. You see, we see ourselves as we are at this moment in time, but God sees us as he created us. So Gideon at that time was feeling really frightened, really scared, and not particularly mighty. But God created Gideon to be a mighty warrior, and that is what God saw. And so when God came to speak to Gideon through the angel, God says, "I see you, mighty warrior, and I want to use you." And then, of course, Gideon says, "But who am I? I'm a nobody. My family is the least of the families, and I'm the youngest of the youngest." And God says, "Well, do you know what? I am with you. I'm going to use you." And the great thing is about this story is Gideon decided to take up the baton and to move with it. And the first thing he did is he got his family in order. He got his household in order. And then went on to become the warrior that God made him to be. But you see, the other thing it says in those verses that I read, God says, "Go in the strength that you already have." And that also speaks to me. You see, we often think we need something else. We need something else. We often look at other people, don't they? Say, "Oh, if I had what they have, then I'd be different." We have what we have because God made us to be whom he made us to be. You know, later on in verse 34, I think it says this: "So the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon." The Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. And yesterday Irene was making some bread, and as she was making bread, she basically in the bowl had in front of her what looked like a pile of flour, but in fact it wasn't. It was flour, but she'd added other ingredients to it. She'd added, for a start, there was different sorts of flour in there, and there was some salt in there, and yeast and other things, I suspect, I don't know. But it certainly didn't look like a loaf of bread to me. But Irene knew what she was making, so in her mind's eye she could see that what she was making was a loaf of bread. But then Irene did something. She added a couple of things. First of all, she added some warm water. And then she started to knead this flour into the water. And of course it became a dough. And as she kneaded the dough, she then added some heat, and the whole thing started to grow. And of course eventually it became a loaf of bread when it was baked. But Irene could see that all the way through the process. She knew what she was making. and she knew what the final results were going to look like. And you know, it's a bit like that with us. God has given us what we need. We don't need to look elsewhere for more ingredients. We are the ingredients, but what we need is the Holy Spirit to come upon us. To, if you like the water, the kneading and the warmth, to make us, to shape us, to mould us into the beings that he created us to be. You see, Gideon went from being this timid person down there threshing the wheat in the winepress to this mighty warrior who absolutely took Israel to the edge and beat many nations in warfare. And Gideon was ruthless, absolutely ruthless in doing what God called him to do. Now, you would not have looked at the man in the winepress and seen him as being ruthless, but that's who he became to be. And but God took him and molded him, and he was obedient to God. So can I encourage you to be the person God made you to be? Don't wish you were something different. Just be content to be the person God made you to be, and ask God to pour his Spirit upon you and to mold you into the shape that he wants you to be. And it may look very different to what it looks right now, just like Gideon looked nothing, at the end of his life, looked nothing like the person at the early days of his life. He really was the mighty warrior God saw in him. God sees something very special in you. And I don't care how you feel right now. God sees you for what he made you to be. But it's up to you. It's up to you whether you become that person or not. And can I encourage you? Can I encourage you to seek God, to be obedient to his ways, to put your house in order and become the person God made you to be? Mighty warrior. Bless you.